So I found out later on just how
Children
devastating
decided it was time for mother and father.
There's Tom.
He left.
Where'd he go?
After all that.
Tom and Judy Pryor, our very own, are going to talk about their trip to Bolivia and Peru last year. And
Okay.
so take it away.
We had a hard time. We have, I hate to say it, but I take thousands of pictures. So we did not want to keep you here forever. So I kind of shortened it, we've shortened it down and kind of given you the highlights. Okay, Tom, do you want to start?
Yeah, our first country we visited was Bolivia, and that's a South American country of about 11 million people. A third of the country is mountainous. At the Andes run right down the center of the country, and then it drops off to the east down into the Amazon basin. So you have high mountains, center of the country, and jungle and rainforest in the eastern part of the country. It's a developing country. About 86% of the population is indigenous, what people might call Indians or American Indians. Spanish is a primary language, but there are also 32 different linguistic and cultural groups within the country. And about at least half the population, for about half the population, Spanish is a second language. Their primary language is something else.
We basically traveled to Bolivia independently. We
traveled.
used some guides there, but
we traveled on our own. Most of the people make their living through agriculture and forestry and mining. If you have a cell phone, you probably have a lithium battery, and the probability is the lithium came from Bolivia.
Okay, can I move? So our first part of our trip after we landed in La Paz, which is the highest airport in the world. And I got off the airplane and tried to run to everything, and I went, I can't do that. So we picked up a guide we stayed overnight, and then the next morning we picked up a guide who was taking us to Lake Titicaca. And Tom, you want to explain the ferry?
Yeah, we traveled. We went into La Paz and then up into the mountains and across a plain to Lake Titicaca, which is the highest and highest freshwater lake in the world, and also the largest in South America. It's quite large. To get there, you need to cross over a long piece of water, and if you can see on the left, there's a bus that's on a barge that's being floated across the river, and on the right you have the ramps that lead up to the barges.
We were in a van, so we could go directly on.
Those ramps are just planks that people, they put the planks up on the barge and you go up on. And we were in a small van, got up onto the ferry, and the ferry goes kind of rocking and rolling across the half-hour trip to the other side.
Actually, we got on the van on the barge with a lot of difficulty. There was a lot of backing up and forth. Our driver and the guy on the barge telling him what to do. And see those planks are there. Yeah. And we get off. And there was this lovely noise, and he gets out and he's looking under his thing, and he did my father's kind of a repair with a paper clip or something to hold things together. And I'm not sure what was actually broken, fuel, whatever, but he managed to make it, which made me a little nervous because we're on these windy mountain roads, it's like, okay, hope it's not his brake line that was broken. And when he got to the hotel, he turned right around and drove back to La Paz to get it fixed. And I went, ugh. But the people on the big buses, the bus drove on to the barge, but before that, the people got out and they took a little ferry boat type over. We were able to stay in our van because it was small enough. They are hoping to replace this with a bridge. They were doing a lot of work on roads going to this, so they suppose this is eventually going to have a bridge to it. But it was a unique experience.
The major town on Lake Titicaca is a town called Copacabana. That's kind of the gateway community. It's a lovely little town on the lake. Nice little markets. Lots of amenities for tourists. It has a major Roman Catholic pilgrimage center
I've got pictures
there, and this is a view from our hotel looking out onto the lake.
And this is the view out the back window of our hotel, which is much more like how the normal people, the locals lived, unfortunately.
Is this the way all the roads are? It's dirt?
A lot of them were dirt. I've got a picture again.
No, there's
that
one
I'll show you.
paved road that leads in and out to La Paz. The
Or it
rest
might
are
be
dirt
stone
roads.
or-
There's just one paved road.
But there is all this obviously tourist thing. There were a lot of new hotels and stuff out
And
there.
when I say paved road, if you've ever driven the Mount Washington Auto Road, you know, going up to Mount Washington,
How
it's-
wide and narrow it is.
how narrow and windy it is. Well, the road to Copacabana is about 126 miles of Mount Washington Auto Road.
So I said I was glad his car was working.
Right, all right.
His truck was working.
Very interesting.
And this actually, all right. See, some of it was like cobblestone or something like that, Tom. In Copacabana.
So,
This is how they do their road work. They were down there in shovels. We
Yeah,
saw
everything.
one piece of equipment the whole time we were there, I think. But basically, it was all digging by hand. You know.
Really bad.
very little power equipment. Anything that's done in Bolivia is usually done by hand, and you know, maybe some power equipment, but it's pretty scarce. I mentioned the pilgrimage center. The man in the hat in the center there is a priest, local priest, and this is a special holy day where there's a blessing of motor vehicles. By people come from all over the country to have their cars, their trucks, their pickups, buses, tractor trailer trucks blessed on this particular feast day. And the priests are very thorough. We watched for quite some time, and he will bless the engine, the brakes, the tires,
Open the doors.
open the trunk. He'll bless the steering wheel. He goes inside the bus and blesses each seat individually.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a
It
pretty.
was interesting.
It's a very
And he also blesses the family. There's obviously
family.
money exchanged in this.
And what have you, and it's a very big event. There were about 14 cars backed up waiting for the blessing, and as soon as one group of 14 comes in, another, and then another, and this goes on all day long.
And the cars are very decorated.
That's it,
And the
flowers.
people
Yeah.
also go around. There's a mix. They're Catholics, but they also have some of their native
Traditional
practices they still practice.
Yeah.
And one of their things is that kind of giving thanks, I guess, like before they drink something, they pour some of it on the ground and stuff. So they went around after the priest went around or following him, and they might have had bottles of soda or water and things that they were sprinkling like on their tires and on the ground and on. I mean, it was very interesting to watch. But that was part of it because again, they do have a thing that before you drink something, if you're given a drink, that you should pour some of it back to Mother Earth. So
there's a kind of interesting fusion of traditional Roman Catholic and old pre-Catholic beliefs that kind of get merged together. So people don't take any chances. They'll do both.
and this is
Okay, the Island of the Sun is in Lake Titicaca. It's about a half-hour boat trip out. This is an island that has no electricity, no motor vehicles of any kind, no paved roads. In our traditional beliefs, our Bible talks about the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve lived and what have you. In the Inca way of thinking, the island of the sun was their Garden of Eden. It was where the first man and the first woman
They're gods.
were created. And so it's even today it's very important from a historical, archaeological, and cultural standpoint, because it's the beginning of the Inca civilization on this particular island.
Soon found out that if you wanted your picture taken, like we had our picture taken with this little girl, but if you wanted to take her picture, have your picture with her, or other situations like that, you had to give some change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, you know.
Well, you also need to ask permission, because not everybody wants to have
Right,
the picture
right.
taken. Yeah.
And we climbed up quite a bit, and then we did get to a small village that actually is becoming I guess it's always been a tourist thing, but there are some more eco-tourists and tourist places being built.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't ruin it.
And when I said no electricity, I misspoke to a little bit. Some of the new eco lodges do have solar panels on the roof for hot water and for lighting the cabins. Okay, once again, that is the Inca representation of the first man and the first woman. That's their equivalent of Adam and Eve on the right.
But they're gods and goddesses.
On the left, we talk about, you know, the tree of wisdom. That's kind of similar to the tree of wisdom. They believe that the spirits come from heaven, are channeled down to earth, and come out through those 3 springs in their beliefs. And each spring has a name. The one on the left is called Don't Steal. The one on the right is called Don't Kill. And the one in the middle is called Work Hard. And those are the 3 principles of Inca traditional religion. We have our 10 commandments. They have their 3 basic principles. Bolivia is a land of incredible biodiversity. There's 17,000 different kinds of plants. 3,000 are used for medicinal purposes. 2,900 kinds of animals, 1,400 kinds of birds, 3,000 kinds of butterfly. And my favorite of all, being from Maine, they have 4,000 kinds of potato.
Really?
4,000 kinds
Which
of
a lot of them they grow. These are the terraces.
The potatoes, they have a potato, you've heard of the microclimates for growing wine, growing grapes in France. The Bolivians can one-up the French. They have a microclimate. They have a potato for every microclimate in the country. And the potatoes are grown on terraces like this. There are some grains are grown there, and some beans and what have you. About 80 to 90% of the terraces grow one of those 4,000 kinds of potato.
A lot of these go back, the Incans go back 700 years, but a lot of these go back pre-Incan.
Yep.
And they had to basically, and don't ask me how they did it, all this stone that made walls, like for a little, like what we would consider like a raised bed or something like that, all had to be brought up that mountain. And the dirt that went in there had to be brought up that mountain. How they did it, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that you wonder how people did it hundreds, thousands of years ago.
But this they've been at it for a couple thousand years. So I mean that's centuries and centuries of
But they still
of
use
work
they
that's
still
been done.
use it, and they
Still
they go
yeah.
all the way up these hills. You know, like I said, how we were getting out of breath going, you know, walking straight. They go up with their packs. I got some other pictures later that show that. It's like, oh my gosh.
And it's real. I mean, any way you look, you could see men and women and children out with their hoes, you know, cultivating the terraces all day long. The cute little houses in the forefront there, those are relatively new tourist accommodations.
But you saw the terracing all over the place. Amazing. Back in La Paz.
La Paz is the capital. It's a city of about 2.3 million. It's the highest capitol in the world. It stands at about 11,500 feet. Remember that Mount Washington is 6,288 feet, so it's another mile higher than Mount Washington. It sits in a valley from the top of the part of the city to the bottom part of the city. You go down 2,000 feet in elevation. It's crazy.
Down windy, crazy roads.
There isn't one single flat street in the entire city. You're either going straight up or you're going straight down. And it's where it's at 11,500 feet. Most people are going very slowly because even if you're accustomed to the altitude, you can't move very fast.
So you can almost kind of picture like a bowl or something with houses like almost all the way around. Okay, and these are the people where all the poor people lived, and in landslides, obviously there's a lot of destruction. Heaven forbid there's an earthquake, and what happens here, you know. But this is a cable car. There are a series of cable cars.
There are five separate cable car routes. This is how people get around from one. Instead of going down 2,000 feet and up 2,000 feet, they ride the cable car across the big valleys. There are five, we would say bus. You know, there might be 5 bus lines. They have 5 cable car lines.
They do a bus though.
4 out of the 5 cable car lines are specifically designed for commuters within the city, and the 5th one is designed for tourists. They have just a tourist route that kind of takes you through a very scenic part of the city where you can see, you can see the city and you can see the mountains and what have you.
We actually took a
local
few
people
of them.
don't use it very much because it's aimed primarily at the tourists, but the other 4 are, they're just like a bus line or a subway line would be in Boston. They're there for people to get around. Interestingly, the Swiss company that made those cable cars is the same company that makes the ski lifts up at Sunday River.
Oh,
So we felt very much at home. La Paz is it has an interesting history. It was the first major center of the Catholic Church in South America, so it has basilicas, it has cathedrals, it has monasteries, it has seminaries.
Sorry about that.
It's a very, very heavy Catholic influence. It also is full of street markets, and I think we'll see that in the next.
Well, maybe not the next one, but coming along in a little while. The drivers there are crazy. You don't have any stoplights at intersections usually, and I mean, I don't know how they didn't collide. They would just like keep crossing.
As I said, the streets are extremely steep. So let me give you some advice. If you want to make a fortune, okay, go to La Paz and open up a brake shop. A brake shop, because I suspect you have to have your brakes lined like every month or so.
Okay,
we left on New Year's. I mean on Halloween. We arrived on the Day of the Dead. It's a very very big holiday in Bolivia.
it actually lasts a week there.
It starts on Halloween and it goes through the next Sunday, whenever that happens to be. So it could be a full week of Halloween-style celebrations. The way of commemorating the dead is to create a family altar such as this one. It's full of fruits and vegetables and
Their favorite thing.
it represents the favorite foods and beverages of the person who is deceased. It'll also be a picture or pictures of that person. And in addition to what we might call a Memorial Day, where we remember people who's passed away, there's also a very strong belief that on Halloween, November 1st, that the soul of the individual comes back to Earth. So you'll see altars like this almost everywhere, any place you can think of, all through the city. It's also very, very common for people to visit the cemetery where their relatives are
Kind
buried,
of have a party type.
and to have a kind of a memorial service,
And we went,
which is not a sober affair at all. It's more of a celebration.
we also went to a cemetery in Peru, and that was, they were like boxes stacked on top of each other, and they had like a little glass area with stuff, and they would have like things that represented the person's favorite stuff. Might be a bottle of booze, it might be a deck of cards, I'm trying to think of something else that we saw, but that kind of stuff that was all different. It might be a Coke bottle, kind of their favorite things that were kind of on display all the time. They also had a thing where you paid for that coffin space, and if you didn't pay your rent, they took the body out and threw it in a mass grave and put another body in there. Kind of strange. One of the things we did with our tour guide was we visited a woman's co-op that dealt with wool, from dyeing it to weaving it to knitting it. They were all women who were single women, maybe single parents and stuff like that. And some of them traveled quite a distance. They were very hospitable to us. Did all sorts of demonstrations, let us get involved in it. These are two of the women. They have an interesting story on some of them have like, I don't know if I have any pictures of it, like what we call a bowler hat, the black hat.
Oh, yeah.
And supposedly what it was introduced, and the men didn't buy it, so somehow and I can't remember how it was. There was a story how somehow they convinced the women that it was a stylish thing to buy or something like that. So
There was a British merchant. The British were very active in Bolivia building railroads for a long time, so there were a lot of English people there for a while. And it was at a time, at the turn of the last century, and bowler hats were very popular with men.
in England.
So a guy thought he was going to make himself a fortune. He bought a huge supply of bowler hats, took them to Bolivia, tried to sell them. Well, men wouldn't buy them. They just didn't like them. But the women did. So it became a style, and you see the bowler hat
This was not,
is
I mean,
very, very
they all wear
common.
hats, obviously, because of the sun.
Yeah, they're very,
wondered
very,
about that.
yeah, it was, and there's Judy doing some weaving and
Trying to. And then this woman is dyeing it. If you can see, it's a vat of green dye.
all of the dyes are natural vegetable dyes.
A lot of herbs and stuff like that also
Herbs
medicinal,
and
that they use
vegetables.
medicinally.
Well, they have some nice bright colors.
Oh, they do. Very
Beautiful.
bright. They had beautiful stuff. Somewhere on the table, there's a couple little placemats I brought in that I bought.
When you travel the streets,
Yeah.
everyone wears very, very vibrant colors.
Bright
It's just
colors,
an
yeah.
extremely colorful experience.
And then the woman in the first picture, this was her house, and she fed us a meal, including the bread that we had was some of the bread from one of the Day of the Dead displays. So they do eat, I guess, at least some of the food that is in the displays. So it's just Tom and I had the meal. And outside.
There is the source of the wool.
Goodness.
And it was funny. 'cause it came out of-
Interestingly, we're about a half a mile outside the center of the city. Once again, a city of 2.3 million. So it's a very urban area, but there are highways with, grass growing along the sides the way we have here. And it's
right in the
too
middle.
valuable a commodity to go to waste,
So
so
there they
the
were.
goats and sheep just will be grazing all through the city.
Are you done with that? This is not the greatest example, but one of the things we noticed where there were buildings that they looked like they had been started and then abandoned. But what we found out, and I guess this is fairly common in third world countries, was that a family would build a house, and they would build the first floor they would finish, but then they would put second and third or maybe a fourth story up above, but they weren't finished. It was just like the outer
Framing.
for it. And then as they got more money, they would build the next part. And then they got more, and they'd build the next part. Very often it was
Or
several.
but it would be common for mom and dad to
Yeah.
build the first floor,
multiple
the
generations.
kids to build the second floor, the grandkids to build the third floor. So it'd be a end up, and eventually be a multi-generational.
So it was kind of
family
funny
home.
because you see these places like, well, why haven't they finished this? And because that's how they do things.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Looks like a carrot country.
Yeah.
This is,
there it was.
there's huge differences in wealth within Bolivia. There are people who are as poor as anywhere else in the
Hovels.
world. But between mining wealth, particularly mining wealth, there are some extremely rich people. And this is kind of a variant on that family house. This is an Inca-style architecture. It's a 5-story house. They're starting to become very common in La Paz,
There's a whole
and
section
the
inside.
story goes like this: the first floor will be rented out as commercial space, a restaurant, a function hall, Apple computer franchise or whatever. The second, third, fourth stories will be rented out to family, and up in the penthouse on the 5th floor is the owner.
Some of them had
So,
huge,
and that's becoming a
huge
very,
social halls. And people would
very
have parties at them.
common way to develop property in La Paz these days.
I thought they were in Las Vegas. They look like Las Vegas to me.
The type of architecture is unique to that particular city. It's some very young architects kind of researched the old Inca architecture, and they've come up with a kind of a modern 2000s version of an old theme.
All right, this is look at their electric wires.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Is that around one pole?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that was frequent. We saw that comment,
Here
frequently.
are the street stalls, and virtually every street downtown is chock-a-block full of little stalls like this.
Could be food.
We are used to going to, we're
Clothes,
used to going to, say, a department store where we'd find everything we need. And in this case, the street is the department store. There'll be a guy with a little stall, and he'll be selling big pens and pencils. The guy in the next stall will be selling legal pads and memo pads and so on and so on, right down the street. And another street I like to do woodwork and what have you, and I noticed went to the hardware section. And you have a street, probably a quarter of a mile long, with people selling fasteners, hinges. I mean, everybody has their own little specialty. So there's no Walmart or big box stores or whatever. What you have is thousands of people selling little bits and pieces.
And besides these little stalls and stuff, or display little areas, things. A lot of the places were, like Tom was talking about the hardware store. It was almost like a store, like you think of a storage space. You rent a storage space, and there was like the roll-up door type thing, and that was their store. It was just a little, very, very small place.
Cost of living is, by our standards, extremely cheap. We went to one of the best bargains in La Paz is when people want a really inexpensive meal, they go to the Chinese restaurant. and there are Chinese restaurants all through La Paz, believe it or not. And the best deal you can get is to go in to get a huge bowl of homemade vegetable soup and a bun and a Coca-Cola for something like 79 cents.
Oh, wow.
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 Then we went to Lima, where we joined our group. We had a group of 10 of us traveling together with a guide for the rest of the trip.
Yeah, we've gone now to Peru, which is the next country above Bolivia. It's still dominated by the Andes. There's still the mountains run up through the middle, but there's a little more in the way of fields and agriculture. Not quite as harsh a climate as Bolivia. It's also bigger countries, 31 million people, 4 major language groups.
Very modern city.
Some of the cities are extremely modern. You might think you would be in Montreal or someplace similar to that. If you go to this winter, if you look at the produce section down at Hannaford's, you're likely to see grapes and asparagus, corn, rice from Peru. This imported this summer. This is their summer, and yeah, we import large quantities of winter vegetables
I've never said them.
from there. We import a lot of we import a lot of frozen fish, believe it or not, and probably maybe even some of the coffee and those that we ate today came from Peru. This is interesting. Once again, it's a huge cathedral, one of the oldest in North America. The bright, shiny parts of the altar that you see there are real gold.
It's just not, and that's just.
And I'm not talking about gold leaf. It's gold.
And is this the church where they had just recently redone all the
Yeah,
gold?
it was recently. I guess gold tarnishes. I don't know a lot about gold, never having had much of it, but apparently it does tarnish over the years, and it was recently refurbished.
This is a side altar, it's not even the main altar.
That's not even the main altar, it's one of the side altars. It's about, I would say, 18 to 20 feet tall.
You see a guy down there.
Maybe, yeah, there's somebody standing there, I guess, for perspective, so. Yeah, it was the first major altar that we'd seen in South America, and it kind of caught my attention.
Oh, yeah.
There's some that are bigger and better, but it was pretty spectacular.
We went to our tour group took us to a different wool co-op, and you can see their colorful outfits, the traditional outfits. They actually had us dressed up in them, but we didn't bring those pictures.
The woolen industry is big in Bolivia and Peru. Why? Well, at 16, 17, 18,000 feet is cold, and you need a lot of nice warm garments.
So they have wool, llama, and alpaca. Yeah. They probably, and then here, see, this is a little bit different version of that loom that I was working on. It's more of a lap loom. They have beautiful, beautiful items, and we just bought a couple things. It's like, okay, what am I going to do with them when I get them home? Okay, Tom the Valley over the what? I went to the Valley of the Dead, but that's not what it is.
No.
I just forget the name of it.
Tom, was La Paz where you got altitude sickness?
Well,
No, that's
it
coming.
started.
Oh, okay.
That's later.
That's
Well,
coming.
he actually had it kind of growing.
I just wanted him to talk about how
This is the
Yeah.
Sacred Valley.
Sacred Valley, thank you.
Once again, it was sacred to the Inca because it's you can't see it, but there's a river down there. There's a fairly wide plain. That plain goes on for
Fertile.
maybe 100 miles, and it produces a pretty high percentage of the food that's grown in Peru. So hence it was called by the Inca the Sacred Valley.
And we visited a local school, and we had to teach them a little lesson, how to say something in English, and they were supposed to tell us in Spanish and things. These girls were funny. They kept braiding my hair in the back, touching I guess it's because it was light color or whatever. They kept touching it and braiding it as I'm sitting there. Okay.
These girls, their native language is a language called Quechua, which is an indigenous language. They're learning Spanish as a second language and English as a third language. So they'll be, when they graduate from high school, they'll be trilingual.
And these girls are kids, not just girls. They all walk to school several miles, and I think school only goes to noon or early afternoon. And then they're apt to walk home and walk up those hills and help their fathers or family on the farm.
Is there any difference between boys and girls going to school? They
were both there. I know what you're saying, but we weren't aware of any difference as far as more important for girls or boys than girls or anything. I know one of the things we talked to these guys, because the group we travel with very often supports like a school or something like this, and things. And I think one of the things they were talking about doing was helping them get a computer lab of some sort in, because they had very little computer access. So it was fun. And then we got up and sang. They sang a song, and then we got up and sang "Led Hokey Pokey" for them.
That's fun.
Oh,
I keep on changing. I can't. We went to the market where we were given a shopping list to in Spanish, so we had to go up in Spanish, and none of us, I don't think any of us really had any Spanish under our belt, and had to ask for the food and how much we wanted. So it's kind of interesting because you're kind of like very tentatively, going up. But it was just gorgeous. This whole thing. The meat right out there. I didn't bring the one with the pig's head there. We got at the market, and you can see the colorful stalls. This was some of the women like in the street when they were selling stuff that just have a blanket out with stuff, and those are potatoes. And they're the kind of potatoes the Incas discovered, or whatever you want to say, freeze-dried potatoes. You know how we have what's the fake potatoes that we have, the potato flakes. I can't think of right now. And so they would peel them and they put them out in the cold and let them dehydrate. So those were little potatoes. So again, they had hundreds of kinds of potatoes there. So
They taste different?
Yes.
yeah. We were buying ingredients to take to a home, which I think is our next. No, that's not our next slide. In a minute's coming up for a meal. And here are some of the, again, colorful, but those backpacks could be carrying kids, babies. They could be carrying their groceries.
Dirty laundry.
Yeah, dirty laundry. They might be, taking just any kind of supplies up the hill. And they have a different type of hat. That again, different groups have different types of hats. But again, very colorful. And a lot of them had skirts that looked like they had 6 crinolines under them or something.
I mentioned the different cultural groups. Usually you can tell which group a person belongs to by the style of hat
So that's
they wear and their style of clothing. The different tribes will adopt different different styles of clothing.
And this we went, I'm sorry about that, I was a cockeye here. We went to a family's home to actually prepare a meal with them. And I'm grinding, I believe it was peppers for chili, how do you say that?
Green chili.
No, the chili
Rellenos, green chili.
Okay, well anyway, stuffed chili peppers, and that's how they cooked. Over
That's
that
a
stove.
stone you're
They-
using to grind?
Yes, a stone. And I didn't do it anywhere near as well as they did it. They kept showing me, and they were doing such a better job. But they do have a couple little small 2-burner stove over there. It's like gas burner, but this is how they did the majority of their cooking. So we prepared a meal with them, and then sat with them at dinner and ate. And you're gonna love this next picture. This is guinea pig. One of their prime.
No.
Yes. They had them in cages, and then
Wait, guinea pigs
it's no
were
different
pets
than us
when my
having
kids were
chicken,
little.
I don't think, but it didn't taste. I wasn't
South
really
America.
crazy about the taste.
Rob had one for a pet.
That's Tom carrying them
Best
in,
pets we ever had.
and you can't really see it, but this was actually the whole dinner. That this was the stuffed peppers. This was the nameless guinea pig. A sausage, a pasta dish, potato, and rice. Now, would we serve all of those together? Never. But they did. Very frequently saw that you'd have at least 2 of those, either
They
pasta.
need the energy.
I guess, but it was just like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the diet is very heavy on vegetables, pasta, starchy
Yeah.
types of food.
Yeah.
Meat is I'll just say there really isn't much meat on a guinea pig, and meat is more like a garnish than as a main meal. It's just kind of like a side dish that's not really emphasized.
That's almost like the opposite of Brazil.
We did have soup.
Brazil's all meat.
Are they slim, the people, or heavy?
No, they tended to be on the heavy side, or at least a lot of the natives. Okay, then we went, I put where, and I was supposed to fix that, I didn't fix that. Where is that, Tom? It's a,
Let's see. I can't remember the name of the
well, it's another I forgot the name of it, I was gonna put that up there, I forgot. It's another archaeological site that we went to on our way to Machu Picchu.
Yeah, the significance of this is that in people who visit Peru, a lot of times they go to visit the Inca structures that were built. And one of the things that local people like to emphasize is that there were at least two major cultures in Peru before the Inca. And that these were not built by the Incas, these were built, and I can't remember the name of the people, but by people who had lived in Peru for thousands of years before the Incas showed up. And the Incas conquered these people, kind of dominated these people, treated them as vassals. But a lot of the Inca construction techniques were borrowed from these people.
We gotta move along. And this, we were hiking, this is some of our group, hiking up, and of course, huffing and puffing, up to that site. And there are the Inca women with their backpacks, just, walking very easily up the hill. Then we went to Machu Picchu, and I didn't spell it, there's another C in there, isn't there? You didn't put it in, I misspelled it, sorry about that. And there's this is the town where we stayed, it's partway up, we stayed there and drove up one day, did a tour, and then drove a second day and took a hike. And we're running, so I'm gonna, and you can see the view, I mean, you're way up there, it's like, oh my gosh.
Machu Picchu means old city in the Quechua language. And it was when it was in its prime, it was a town of about 1,000 people. When the president wants to get away, he goes to Camp David. And when the emperor of the Incas wanted to get away, he went to Machu Picchu. It was kind of like this. Yeah, it was kind of like this spa town where people went to relax.
But it was not lived in for very long, actually, considering. And again, they had to get all this stone stuff, and there were some massive stones up there. And how they did it, and they had dragged them up. I don't have pictures. Just gorgeous views. This was the first day we went, was nice and clear. The second day we went, it was very overcast. And Tom and I took a hike with a guide up to the Sun Gate, excuse me. Some of it was like this, some of it got a little more treacherous getting up there. We only did about 2 miles. There's a whole, was it 26 miles? Well, there's a longer trail that takes several days that people do from start up to here. But they have porters that carry most of their stuff, and they're not carrying there because they sleep overnight and everything. But this is at the gate, and this was going up, and you can see how misty and foggy it is. And where is it? The Machu Picchu. Well, you can see there's a windy road there. That's how we got up. We took a bus from the city to get up there. Very windy road. But you couldn't see anything, and so we waited for almost an hour, and it finally cleared. And we're above the actual buildings up there. You can see that clearing there. That's what it is. Because I was like, why are we waiting so long? Why are we waiting? It's all foggy. And he knew that if we waited long enough, it would clear off. Or, so again, coming down.
Did you plan to be there for 2 days, or was
yes,
it?
the tour.
Yes.
A lot of people only go for 1 day,
But
because we were staying in a hotel, it was partway there. We took a train from that first place we went to. We took a train that took us to that city, or that town that we were in, and then we had to take a bus going up. So the second day was one that you could either explore more. Tom and I were the only ones in our group that decided to take the hike up to the gate. We had a guide with us that took us up there. took us a couple hours anyway to get up there.
Machu Picchu it's a World Heritage Site, and it gets about 5 million visitors a year. So it's for such a remote place, it's surprising. There's a surprising number of people
We came
walking
down,
around.
just as we got back down to where all the stuff is, I think it was, it started pouring rain. So everybody, mass exodus to go out there, and everybody waiting for the buses, and then it cleared. I think before we got on the bus, it had stopped raining. Hadn't it? Actually, getting there on the train, we were in that other town, and our bus driver was on the phone to the train people, and they said, "Oh, the trains are going to be late, so wait a while. Don't come right away." All of a sudden, they said, "Oh, we changed our mind. Get here quickly." So we got there. We had to basically run from the bus to the train. They were waiting for us to take off. And I don't know what would have happened. We would have missed the whole day, I guess, if we hadn't done it. So here are some more iconic pictures of the. It's just amazing how much is there. Oh shoot, I missed it. There was another picture. I must have lost it. There were lots of llamas up there. Right? Somehow it's not there anymore. I don't know where it disappeared to. On the cutting room floor. And this is Cusco.
This is Cusco, Peru, and this is what was originally the original capital of the Inca Empire before the Spanish conquest. There was a huge city. There'll be pictures of it in a minute. But there was a huge city there. After the Spanish conquest, one section of the city, this particular section, became a very Spanish section of the city, and then across the river, there was the more indigenous Inca-style city.
And this was just before we were going to Ecuador and go to Galapagos and stuff. And this is where, Lisa, Tom had decided he had to go to the emergency room.
But I wanted to tell what amazing
I'm going to tell that, yeah.
healthcare you
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
It's
So he went.
surprising.
Our guide took us over. The funny thing is there was a girl there who was interning from BU or Boston College, one of the two, I can't remember. So most of them obviously did not speak English, so luckily our guide was there to get us going. Tom had x-ray, EKG, medication, although it was minor medication. It was a fluid, a diuretic type thing. The cardiologist came and saw him. We were there for about 3 hours maybe?
Yeah.
The whole bill, $178.
Oh my
How much would that cost in the United States?
Thousands.
Yeah, thousands. I was like, what?
Yeah. And that included an emergency room visit.
The emergency room, and so,
What symptoms? did
it
you
was, well, he was having a lot of difficulty,
I had
Sleeping.
altitude
it was
sickness.
altitude sickness
Mhm.
and some breathing difficulties. And once they gave him the diuretic, that's basically what took care of it.
When you have
and they gave
altitude
it-
sickness, you retain fluids, and then you get very.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we're going quite a while here. Careful of the cords, Barbara.
Keep going.
Can you get out?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Well, I don't.
No,
know.
no, it's not your, it's us. Okay, Tom, no, it's us. that
I'm so
we're
glad you
talking
were
too
able
much.
to
Yes.
get us there. Thank you.
Okay, watch out where you're going. Okay,
I will.
Tom?
See you next week, Barbara.
See you.
Bye.
We are almost done, guys.
Just a couple of street scenes in the city of Cusco.
What's the
And
statue?
that's a statue of an Inca emperor right in the dead center of town. It's after the Spanish conquest, the poor Inca emperor was put on trial by the Spanish and executed. And this is kind of a memorial for him.
Oh, I missed a page here. Oops. Oh, why is that not showing? Oh,
Try
no.
again.
Oh, somehow we got a couple blank pages in here, that's all. Okay, we went to a shaman, and he did a whole ceremony, and then the stuff he had, he went around and kind of blessed us type thing, and then he burnt all that stuff in that fire.
I love his hat.
The doctor I had, she graduated from medical school in Peru. She'd done residency in Paris. She'd also done some medical work in Germany, and So I got, very, very good medical care, but most of the population can't afford that, so they go to traditional healers that have herbal medicines, traditional medicines, and this is he's kind of regarded as one of the best practitioners in the country.
Then back in the city, we went to a school that's for special needs people, and they had a band, and they danced, and they sang, and they just loved what they were doing. And this was, I think, La Bamba or some one of our American type songs. I tell you, I've been to some school concerts here that were not as good. They were very good. And they now actually they had a gift shop and stuff, and then they now have a restaurant that they're teaching some of the people how to work in. It hadn't opened yet when we were there. So it was fun. And then we went to this woman, it was a restaurant, but we had a room just to ourselves, and they served us a traditional meal, and this is almost like a smoothie, and Tom and I are both trying to remember, it had some fruit in it, I think, and it was very good. And the different foods that we had, avocado and a plantain.
Rice.
Do they have good
Tomatoes.
refrigeration there?
I think the people probably in their home, the local people, probably don't. I think they shop probably daily type thing. I'm sure the wealthier people have it. This was just kind of fun. There was some historical.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 people would shop daily for their needs. They'd go out, buy what they need, come back, prepare it,
Yeah.
start over
Like I
again
said,
the
we were
next
out
day.
for that family.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, that's it. I guess that's it. That's it.
Yay.
Sorry for so long getting this going here. I really
Top
need
of
to
some of the
picture.
weavings
Oh.
is really typical.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's all done by hand.
I mean, we could have bought whole great big things, but it was like, what am I gonna,
Yeah.
Beautiful colors.
what am I gonna do with it?
I wonder what local things they use to make such bright colors. Did they tell you that?
Oh, yes, they did. It's a lot of it is like natural plants and herbs and stuff, not how we sometimes dye with onion skins and things, that kind of.
Yeah.
I've done that with onion skins. I've dyed Easter eggs with the kids with beets
Right.
and onion skins.